What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of AEW Week in Review. I am your host, Mark Perry, editor of Pro Wrestling News Hub, covering pro wrestling and not sports entertainment. On this week's show, Sting speaks, Kenny speaks, and so much more, plus our recap of Dynamite and Dark and the latest TV ratings. You're not going to want to miss that. So, how do you get in touch with the show? It's simple. You email podcast at ProWrestlingNewsHub.com with your MP3s or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Cutoff time is 6 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. We appreciate that. Plus, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. We always like that. We got Mr. Fourth Row, Salty Sea Dog, checking in as well, talking about what do you think of Sting being in AEW. This is still big news, and based on the ratings, it was still big there. At the end of the show, I got a little recap of where we're at with our AEW Fantasy Wrestling app, but we're looking like that January 4th time frame is still going to happen. So we're very excited about that. So we'll get in that, the social, and so much more. So without further ado, folks, let's just get into the week that was AEW. All right, let's get into AEW Dynamite's results for December 9th. The return of Sting. Sting speaks. That's the main thing going on with this show. We start off first, however, with the tag match, the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson versus Hybrid 2. If Hybrid wins, they get a future title shot. This started off with the show with a bang. Winner, Young Bucks. I gave this a 4.25. Initially, this was my match of the night, and I changed my mind later on in the show, but absolutely a great match between the two. And Jack Evans, even though I made fun of his teeth the other day, like, he's a fantastic performer in the ring. Great match all around. Lots of bumps, lots of, whoa, I think they're going to win. Nope, they didn't. So, great way to kick off the show. MJF checks in, saying he's getting ready for his Dynamite Diamond final tonight with Orange Cassidy. He's all fired up about that. Darby Allin checks in with, I posted on Twitter, I think is one of the best promos they did with Darby Allin, where they show him pictures and he kind of says things, and it really got me fired up about Brian Cage. And then, of course, they showed Sting at the end, a picture of Sting. And if you didn't get a chance to check it out, I thought it was well done. And they've done some stuff with our Darby Allin, and I'm like, whatever. But this by far was the best one. I really like that. Then, finally, Sting comes into the ring and faces CODY. They go back and forth. It was very cool. The Sting hugged Tony Schiavone. They didn't really give away too much other than that Sting, and he might be there to help Darby Allin, but he's basically say he's going to be there for a while. It's interesting about Sting's talking, and also we'll get into Kenny Omega's. They really didn't give anything away, I think, because it was taped. So Sting didn't really say much other than things that we know, that he probably will align, that he's signed a long-term deal, and that he is aligned with Darby Allin, which got a huge Darby Allin chant. So we'll see where Sting leads us. But he says he's going to be around. Didn't say if he was going to wrestle. Didn't say anything. I think because the show was taped. Tag match, FTR, Cash Wheeler, and Dax Harwood versus the Varsity Blondes, Griff Garrison, Brian Pillman Jr. This was a good match. I mean, for both Pillman and Griff Garrison to come in there, and FTR did well as well. It was a decent match. I gave the FTR was the winner. No shocker here. Gave that a grade of 3.75. No shocker there. Singles match, Dustin Rhodes versus number 10, Preston Vance. This one, I was like, what was the point of we're doing this? Winner, Dustin Rhodes, gave this a grade of 3.0. The interesting thing at the end, which made me like, there's something here, is that the Dark Order comes out at the end and asks Dustin to join, but it wasn't like your typical Dark Order join us kind of deal. There was a little bit more to that. They said they'd give him the number 7, and they made some hints about maybe something coming down the road with Dustin and his family. And we know AEW is really good at long-term storytelling, so there's something to keep an eye on between the Dark Order and Dustin Rhodes. be interesting. One thing that I could potentially, just throwing it out there, who knows what the deal is with Brody Lee, but wouldn't it be interesting if Dustin Rhodes led the Dark Order for a little while there? Throwing it out there. Then we get Shaq in his exclusive interview with Brandy Rhodes. They sort of exchange pleasantries, and then basically Shaq talks a little trash, and Brandy throws a cup of water in Shaq's face because they were talking about setting something up between Brandy and Jade Cargill. That's coming down the pike, but not Shaq wrestling, but Shaq saying something to the effect that he'll be there for Jade Cargill in her corner. So there's something going on there. Again, not a lot thrown out there, but something enough where you're just interested and you want to learn more. Inner Circle had an ultimatum. They shook hands, sort of. But basically, Sammy Guevara was like, one more mess up and I'm out. But the Inner Circle is still intact. They did mention Santana not being there. Didn't even show up for work kind of thing. They had to make mention. Maybe he'll be back next week. We know that there was some kind of personal issues going on with him. We know he's also suffered from depression. So who knows what's going on with him. But he was out, and it looks like Inner Circle will be friends for now. But who knows where that's going to lead to. FTR checks in basically saying that they're invincible. They're going to kick everybody's butt. The typical stuff. And they also mentioned about doing that one maneuver, trying to do the flips, which cost them the match, which was great storytelling. And now they're ready to beat people up in AEW, basically. Lance Archer and the Lucha Brothers, my man Rey Fenix and Penta versus Eddie Kingston, the Butcher, and the Blade in a tag match. This one, Penta gets eliminated early, gets hurt, quote-unquote, early. This was an okay match. Winner, Eddie Kingston, the Butcher, and the Blade. I gave this a 3.50 match. I'm really not sure what's going on with this pairing, what's going on with Lance Archer and Penta and Pac. Who knows what's going on with this? There's got to be something to come in the future for this match. But this was okay match. Then we get a backstage segment where Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill beat up Red Velvet, and then other girls get involved in the roster, which leads us to next week's show, potentially. Matches going on there. Then we get Abadon versus Tesha Price. Congratulations, Tesha Price, getting on AEW Dynamite. Of course, this wasn't that great. It was more about Abadon being a scary monster. Of course, Abadon wins, 2.75. Sheeta comes out because Abadon's beating up Tesha Price and hits her with a kendo stick across the head. And then Abadon kind of lays out and then gets back up. So building up her character, we need to build up Abadon more before we have a kind of payoff with Hikaru Shida. But I like this two pairing. This can go all the way to February and we should not see a payoff in December for that. Kenny Omega checks in, and if you saw Kenny Omega's appearance on Impact Wrestling, basically the same kind of spiel. Actually, I thought maybe the Impact Wrestling appearance was a little bit better. Kind of talk about the same things. Again, I think it also goes back to the Sting segment, whereas, hey, we can't really give too much. It's taped. The nerds on the internet would let it go, like release it if he says anything crazy, something newsworthy, that it would get leaked. So they just kind of played it straight. He arrived in a helicopter, but still good stuff. I like this two pairing. And again, tease you for the next week. Well, what's to come? You gave me a little bit, and now I'm curious what's going to happen next. So between Sting, Kenny Omega, Abadon, all these stories and Inner Circle, I'm like, okay, what's coming next? Unlike crappy WWE television, which just gives you just flat matches that make no sense and you have no interest in there. The schedule came out, something that we were curious about and that we reported on Pro Wrestling News Hub. Is like, what's going on with December 23rd? Because there's an NBA game on, Celtics versus the Bucks. That Impact will follow immediately that. It's going to be a late night, a very late night, because by the time Impact is over at midnight and I do video, it's going to be a late night. But hey, it's just before Christmas Eve, so suck it up. Then we get a New Year's Smash 2021 night, December 30th, which supposedly is going to be a big show, and then another January 6th show. I assume those two will be taped. for one big kind of thing. And then we go into 2021. No word on if any ticket sales, when the next live shows are going on in January and February. So we'll have to tune in and find out. I'm sure what's going on in the country will have something to do with that. Finally, we get Dynamite Diamond final, MJF versus Orange Cassidy. You knew, people were going to get involved. You had some of the other guys from backstage, like Brandon Cutler and Top Flight, came out because, Inner Circle was interfering. And then they had a bunch of good spots. Winner, MJF, I gave this grade a 4.25 because it really had me going with all the different twists and turns. But what made it interesting is that, it was that typical, like, okay, one side's going to screw the other side kind of thing. But Miro, of all people, comes out and actually screws Orange Cassidy over, still going back to that over the summertime, breaking his video game deal. And Trent going at it. So there's some kind of program going on. So he interferes, which costs Orange Cassidy the match. And that was kind of cool because we weren't expecting that. I really expect big things from Miro in this quarter of pro wrestling. That they definitely was time to open up the gates and let Miro out and do his thing. So MJF wins 4.25. And of course, our elite match of the night. All in all, it was a great night of wrestling as usual. Again, they didn't let out a lot because it was taped. So this just leads a lot to the next couple AEW Dynamites, which makes it all fun. Next week's Dynamite card for December 16th. The big one is Hangman Page and Dark Order. John Silver and Alex Reynolds versus Matt Hardy and Private Party. I'm just not into this whole Matt Hardy thing with Private Party. If you saw BTE this past week, they made mention of, Isaiah Cassidy getting knocked out first, and Matt did that. And maybe there's some storytelling going on with this. And I like the Page Dark Order kind of thing going on. So this is probably the match, at least right now, that I'm interested in the most. Some other matches, Serena Deeb and Big Swole versus Ivelisse and Diamante. Good to see a women's tag match going on there. And anytime you put Serena Deeb in there, and even Ivelisse and Diamante, all four of them are good wrestlers. So this should be a good match. This week we got Abadon in a squash match. Didn't really anticipate anything big. This should be better. Hopefully they give them a nice little run to continue. We get Cody Rhodes versus Angelico. I kept always saying Angelico, but it's Angelico as they pronounce it. Not really sure what the purpose of this is. Didn't they wrestle somebody else? But okay, not really sure where we're going with this. I don't know. Maybe I just thought of it now. Hybrid 2 joining with Sting and Darby Allin? Interesting. Why would we pair these guys together? We'll have to find out. Then the Acclaimed, Matt Caster and Anthony Bowens versus SCU, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. This is to give Max Caster and Anthony Bowens. Not really sure I'm liking the whole John Cena rapper thing going on with them. And this match is like, I'm not really sure what the deal is with this. I guess it's to put Acclaimed on TV to get some little run there. But I'm sure they're going to have a jam-packed show and more stuff to come. But you just have to wait as we get closer to the show, because usually the live shows, we don't know until Tuesday where they start really announcing some other things, especially over the weekend as well. AEW Dark results for December 8th. First up, we have Baron Black versus Sonny Kiss. Winner, Sonny Kiss. Congratulations there. Brian Cage versus Danny Limelight. Winner, Brian Cage. No shocker there. Alex Gracia versus Nyla Rose. Winner, Nyla Rose. Vicky Guerrero had some things to say about Brandy Rhodes after the match. The Waiting Room, Dr. Britt Baker. We have Marco Stunt playing guitar on there. Heard that was good stuff. Dark Order's 10, Preston Vance versus Aaron Solo. Winner, 10. Now, if you watched Dynamite, you saw 10 kick Solo in the face. So wonder if that had something to do with, who knows if that's a little correlation between Dark and Dynamite. Peter Avalon versus Louis Val. Winner, Peter Avalon. Peter Avalon afterwards announces Pretty Peter's pageant provocation. See what that's all about. Sean Dean, Sean Maluta, and Ryzen versus Gun Club. Billy Austin and Colton. Winner, Gun Club. Red Velvet versus Danny Jordan. Winner, Red Velvet. You could see Danny Jordan out there. I think it's been a little while. Falco and Mike Magnum versus Jurassic Express. Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. Winner, Luchasaurus. Oh, Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt, actually. Winners, Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus, and Marco Stunt. Fuego del Sol. If you watch Sammy Guevara's YouTube channel, you've become a Fuego fan. We are Fuego fans on Pro Wrestling News Hub and our fantasy app. We will definitely be drafting Fuego versus Brandon Cutler. Unfortunately, Brandon Cutler wins. Fuego loses. Skylar Moore versus Ivelisse. Ivelisse takes the win. Big Swole versus Lindsay Snow. Winner, Big Swole. Sathura Churin and VSK versus Hybrid 2. Winner, Hybrid 2 and Helico and Jack Evans. Diamante versus Tesha Price. Winner, Diamante. And we get a H2 interview talking about Dynamite. Then we have Freya States versus Shanna. Winner, Shanna. Then John Cruz and Michael Nakazawa versus The Acclaim, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens. Winner, The Acclaim. Colt Cabana, Alex Reynolds versus Varsity Blondes, Pillman and Griff Garrison. Winner, the Varsity Blondes, getting the win. Interesting there. And really, Colt Cabana has been doing nothing. And that basically, then we get a little interview with Dustin Rhodes afterwards, and that ends it for AEW Dark. Ratings are in for the Wednesday, December 9th, 2020 edition of AEW Dynamite. They were released today. And according to a report by Showbuzz Daily, AEW finished second overall for the night again. Dynamite drew 995,000 viewers. This is way up from last week's 913,000 viewers. They finished second overall last week as well, so that's 2 weeks in a row, and they actually gained viewers. I thought that they would actually lose viewers a little bit. Dynamite was taped this week at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, featured Sting talking with Cody Rhodes. That happened, and then, of course, Kenny Omega came out as well. NXT drew 659,000 viewers, slightly up from last week's 658. They finished 37th overall. Last week, they finished at 40th. The show featured the fallout from War Games, and we hear from the NXT champion, Finn Balor, who is on the main roster. He's a main roster guy, and he is your NXT champion, and that really didn't even help. Total combined wrestling audience for both shows was way up, 1.654 million viewers. It was 1.571 million total viewers last week. Now, to give you an idea of what this numbers look like, we check out our rating histories tracker on Pro Wrestling News Hub. And you can see 900,000, 2 weeks in a row. That has happened. The last time that happened was early September, but that didn't really count because they weren't going head-to-head with NXT, because NXT had moved nights. Remember, all those nights had shifted. Then the last time, if you scroll down, 2 weeks in a row at 900,000 viewers, you're going, let's see, the last time that happened, you're going all the way to the January. So AEW had strong numbers, declined in December last year. Then January came in, and they were able to crank it back up. And now you're going into another January, now with Sting and Kenny Omega and all these new storylines and plots going on. So is it possible that next week's Dynamite could reach 1 million? Remember, they only hit 1 million once, and that was September 9th, again, because there was no competition from NXT. So we'll see if they can hit that 1 million. But, man, they were close, and if you want to actually rank it for the year, it was the second best total viewers of the year behind that. And actually, it was the best, when you think about it, going head-to-head against NXT. It was the best of the year. So that is some big news. Sting definitely draws some interest, doesn't he? That's why you pay him the big money. Based on the ratings, news programming took 7 of the top 15 spots, CNN taking 4 of them, just like last week. MTV's Challenge Double Agent won the night. They beat out NXT, with the Real Housewives of the OC coming at number 3. And the 2 other spots were CNN programs. So what's fascinating about watching these is now we're getting back into kind of how things were before, where you get, a lot of heavy news cycle and then mixed in with some other shows. But this time it's the roles reversed. Now it was all Fox News, and now Fox News is 8 and 9, while CNN is coming up higher and more. So that's, to me, it's still interesting that that's holding out. Newsmax has dropped in there as well, and it's interesting. I just find this kind of stuff fascinating. I think the news cycle will come down, and that's going to really help as fans start to go back into the stadiums, and I think it will really supercharge AEW, and we could see a bunch of million viewers nights in the future coming in the spring. Fingers crossed, as long as this thing that's going on that I don't want to say comes down. But this is great news for AEW. Can they keep it up next week when we have a live show? Will it come down? Sometimes it does come down for a live show. We'll have to tune in to find out. But I'll tell you right now, the pro wrestling world is abuzz of what's going on with AEW and Impact Wrestling as well. Impact Wrestling draws big numbers with that Kenny Omega appearance. So according to Showbuzz Daily, Kenny Omega's appearance on Impact Wrestling did huge numbers for the show. The crossover finished 96th for the night. It drew a .08 in the key 18 to 49 demo. To put this in perspective, Impact Wrestling on Access rarely ever finishes in the top 150 shows of the night on cable. So this is a huge win for AEW as well as Impact Wrestling. Last week's Impact Wrestling show had 166,000 viewers with a .05 rating. It almost topped its September 27, 2018 show on Pop TV. I think they moved from Pop and now they're on Access, or Access changed their name to Pop, who knows, which had 222,000 viewers. Also, the crossover episode helped the company secure its best ever viewership on its Twitch stream. 50,000 concurrent viewers compared to the usual 250 to 350. 2,500, I should say, to 3,500 concurrent viewers on a Tuesday night. So it looks like Tony Khan's paid ad really paid off. Some news on when AEW will have their next major Dynamite show, and hold on for a second, it's not going to be that very long. So we had this whole big thing. We had Kenny Omega beating Jon Moxley and Sting showing up and Shaq. So we figured maybe next year we'll have another big Dynamite episode, but no. According to Dave Metzler, he noted in a recent edition of the Wrestling Observer radio program that these angles, with everything going on, will likely come full circle during the December 30th episode of Dynamite, which is described as to be a really big show. This is interesting. Since AEW announced a total of 10 segments, which include 6 matches for this past week, Metzler noted that the number of people wondering if it makes sense to announce both Sting and Shaq on the same show, especially a week after the Winter is Coming episode. Metzler said the reasoning is that, quote, if they can get him, Shaq, that's the week the segment is on. And they already announced Tony Schiavone's interview with Sting last week. So look for December 30th to have another really big AEW show to close out the year. Ever since its inception of AEW back in January 1st, 2019, the professional wrestling world had hoped and even wondered which promotion, if any, All Elite Wrestling will have a working relationship. They've talked about New Japan, of course, Impact Wrestling, now that you got Kenny Omega showing up. But there's been not really many details about going on with AEW and Impact Wrestling. so far. However, the Young Bucks have been mentioning for 2 years that they are interested in working with Impact Wrestling and have even teased that big surprises are on the horizon. Further details were provided on the partnership that reveals Kenny Omega's appearance on Impact was just to be a one-off and done primarily as a favor to Don Callis. If that's true or not, we're not sure. However, AEW's Tony Khan liked the idea of the appearance with Callis and Omega appearing on Impact and ultimately signed off on it. So aside from Kenny Omega making an appearance on AEW, as well as Impact Wrestling World Champion, Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, will be likely to be making an appearance in AEW as well down the road. Now, no word yet on who the Good Brothers would be facing in AEW, but Omega's appearance in Impact Wrestling will likely be used as a setup to their match in the company. This has been talked about before, and then even the Good Brothers wanted to be part of AEW and wish they actually joined AEW, and they didn't, and they took the money, and then we know the rest is history. And we know that they have a good relationship with the Young Bucks. So could we see a December 30th Young Bucks versus Good Brothers on AEW television? We'll have to tune in and find out. So this one you don't see very often. AEW segments was, quote, one of the best performances of 2020 according to the New York Times. That's right. We all know the Le Dinner Debonair featuring the Demo God Chris Jericho and MJF. Well, it made the New York Times best performance list of 2020. This is not just from any guy. This was put over and praised by Pulitzer Prize winning critic Wesley Morris. Morris praised MJF for his in-ring talents as well, and he even took a shot at Vince McMahon in the WWE. Morris said that MJF and Jericho's version of Me and My Shadow was less than spectacular, but not for anything MJF did. Morris would then note that MJF was smooth in a way that should worry Ric Flair and MJF makes you want to say, woo! Basically what he said. Puts it over big. It was reported in the past, of course, that MJF was the one who came up with the idea of the musical performance after watching Rocket Man, which was the movie based on Elton John that was released in 2019. So even the New York Times, how did they even get the New York Times to even look at something pro wrestling related? Everybody here at Pro Wrestling News Hub would like to congratulate Renee Paquette and Jon Moxley on their child coming. And for those wondering, they revealed that it will be a girl. Renee posted a cake on Instagram, which had the color inside. The color was pink. So there you have it. Jon Moxley and Renee will be having a baby girl, so congratulations to them. In an interview with People Magazine, Renee noted that her maternal instinct was telling her that she was having a girl and that her and Moxley were pitching around some classic/timeless names. We'll find out. I assume maybe Mox is going to take a little time off, especially with his wife pregnant and the whole things going on in the country. We might not see him for a little while, at least maybe to the end of the year. Maybe he comes back in the spring. Congratulations to both of them. Moxley, well-deserved rest, wrestler of the year. Deserves to get a little break. Starting his family, congratulations. Now, I assume we'll see him in 2021. Did you know you can get all the latest AEW news right from your phone? That's right, we're excited to announce the Pro Wrestling News Hub app. That's right, and it's free. You can get it for your iPhone. You can get it for your Google Android phone. And they're both free. You get all our breaking AEW news, information from Pro Wrestling News Hub right from your phone. You can just visit the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. What do you get? You get the latest news from Pro Wrestling News Hub. You get push notifications when a new post or story comes out. You get our podcast on the phone. You can leave us a review on iTunes, links to our social media, and so much more. All you have to do is, if you have an iPhone, go to the iTunes store and just look up Pro Wrestling News Hub and download it. Just type in AEW News. You can get our phone app And guess it is free, my friends. It's free. So head over. You get all the latest news right from your phone, from your friends from Pro Wrestling News Hub, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. And it's best of all, it's free.
All right, let's quickly get into our social media stuff this week. First up, talking about Hikaru Shida and Riho being in that top pro wrestling women's list. Franco da God says, where is Jazz? Interesting. I don't know where Jazz is when it comes to that. We're on the YouTube's channel looking at our comments here. Gamer Friend says, I got to tell you, AEW is the best thing since sliced bread right now. Hopefully that bread is gluten-free. I might have to point that out. But yes, AEW is the talk of the wrestling world right now and should be. Maurice Cunningham says, with all the big names in AEW and still didn't hit 1 million viewers. Yeah, but that was certainly close. It was certainly close, but didn't get it over the hump per se. I think they could maybe do it next week. I mean, that's a lot of people tuning in. You still got stuff going on around the world, so people are tuning into that. I think next week is the week. If they're going to do it, it's going to be next week's show. There's no question about that. I don't see how they pull that off. The Christmas one on the 23rd, that's after the NBA game. There's no way that would do 1 million. And then you're getting into the holidays. So this is their last shot at 2020 to hit 1 million is this week. On to the Twitters. AEW fan page 01. What did you think of the impact last night with Dynamite fans? He says, the AEW curiosity overshadowed everything on the show. No major crossover except for that what was advertised. Probably AEW wants to hit the 1 million mark again before the year ends, so they're trying to get some extra set of eyes from Impact fans. That's my view. I would agree with that. I think that's true. And about Tony Khan's paid advertisement, he said he buried Impact Wrestling on their show, while Impact Wrestling probably didn't even had a clue. Bought an ad, buried the company, put over his tag division massively. Tony was great. Yeah, it was. That segment with Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone was hilarious. I thought that was they played that perfectly well. It was cheap, but it was funny. Saying, hey, I could probably buy Impact Wrestling. That was some great stuff. So I definitely think there's more to that coming in the future. Speaking of the future is now. Let's go to our social media or our emailer, Salty Sea Dog checking in. Says Dynamite was fun this week and great wrestling as usual. Some segments were not what I was expecting, but altogether, still a solid show. Yeah, I think it was. I mean, some things were I always can tell if I'm like starting to mess around with my phone or prep for the podcast during the show, or I'm like, that's usually where when I know that things aren't that great. And there was a couple instances where I kind of had that. I thought Sting would stay his stoic character. What we got was a fun Sting enjoying the see you around kid to Cody was good, but I expected different. Yes, we didn't get a dark Sting. We got more of like, hey, I'm happy to be here Sting. Also, with the Omega segment, he did not say anything different from the segment they did on Impact. I talked about that. I just think they needed to do that because they were going to be on both shows, which played it safe because nerds out there are going to post stuff what they saw and everything. I was still good, and I guess that is what we should expect from a heel promising a big announcement and saying we are not ready for it. I think that's going to come on the 18th. The tag matches were great. I loved FTR, made a quick work of the Varsity Blondes, and enjoyed the more competitive Bucks match. The Hybrid 2 looked impressive in their losing effort. Totally agree with that. Jack Evans is great. I might even add him to my fantasy AEW squad. I'm happy that they are keeping the inner circle around longer. It will be good when they finally implode, but as of right now, I'm happy they are moving forward. Yes, me too. I was a little concerned that maybe we were pulling the trigger a little too early on this, but this storyline could drag out all the way to the summer. As always, the Hangman Adam Page storyline advances. It is great that he is teaming up with Dark Order next week. Yes, that is my main thing that I'm excited about next week is Page with Silver and Reynolds in the Dark Order. I think that's great. The main event was good, and the diamond ring does deserve to be on MJF. He uses it well. Also, Miro is looking strong, and it was good to see them leave the episode with him wrecking house. Yes, it is time to unleash Miro as what he always should have been in WWE, and they blew it with him. As always, Dynamite was fun watch. Looking forward to next week and seeing the Impact AEW relationship evolve. Yes, me too. Maybe we get that Impact crossover thing happen live this week, and at that 9 o'clock hour on AEW. We'll have to see, because this is the one. If you're going to go for that million, this is the one to do it. And remember, they've only hit a million once this year. But you know who is 1 in a million? Mr. Fourth Row, as always.
It's a go for another phone call there from Mr. Fourth Row. Hey, AEW Week in Review and Mr. Mark, let's talk about the one and only Sting in AEW. I think for them, this is the right move because, like they keep on mentioning, with the nostalgia of AEW being on TNT, WCW, and Sting, all that connection. This is the right move. So it's going to be great to see what they do. I think, in my opinion, his talk speaks out there with Tony Schiavone, I thought was great. It hits. And, yes, distractors may say that he is saying the same types of things that other wrestlers do, but Sting can say it in his own way, and it can be totally different and be impactful. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And, just to kind of think about this, this is going to be great. I think this is going to be fantastic for him because he can have fun with this, go out on his own terms with this. He did say that, it's a long-term deal, which I think is great because that's going to be a fantastic point if that's the end for him. If this is going to be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, then he's going to help make AEW that long-term TV program that is going to go on even after that. So I think that's going to be a fantastic thing too. So I think this is a mutually beneficial thing for both Sting and EW. Their partnership is going to be great, and it's going to be fantastic to take that ride with him. It just WWE just doesn't use him correctly in my opinion, and so this is gonna bring kind of things all full circle for him, and I think it's great when we could see a legend in any kind of industry, and in particular sports, to be able to do that. For example, in my life with sports, being in Denver Broncos, getting to see, for example, John Elway get to have his last game winning the Super Bowl. So, this could be the same thing for Sting in the future, and however long it's going to be. So I think that's going to be a thing for him. But anyways, that's my view. Not from the cheap seats, not from the most expensive seats, but from the fourth row.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fourth Row, for checking in. And I agree with you on a lot of what you said. I think Sting, this is the opportunity for Sting to have some fun. have some fun in AEW. Have some fun being a wrestler, kind of going out. Maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 5-year deal, who knows. But to enjoy his time in AEW in an environment that is, I'm wondering that he might not have had experienced in his career ever. You're talking about the dark days of WCW. We hear Tony Schiavone always talk about how terrible it was working there. I'm sure it was the same thing for Sting. And then even being in WWE or TNA, maybe he had some fun in there. But even in WWE, I'm sure that I always feel like that was just like, hey, let's collect a paycheck. Let's have a little fun with this. Get the Undertaker thing, which they didn't do. And put it with Triple H. We've went over that. But right now, I mean, the dominant force in pro wrestling is AEW, which it should be, because it's got the best product, and WWE's product sucks. I hate to tell you. I've watched it for years. It's always disappointing, and at least with AEW, you leave like feeling good about yourself. We just need to convert those WWEians to be like, there is other stuff out there that's better, and demand the best from, you're spending your time and energy investing in something. And I just remember being like, why am I wasting my time watching WWE? I'm not enjoying it. And I think a lot of people watch it just because they feel like they have to or something. You don't have to. You can watch AEW or you can watch Hallmark Channel. I don't care. It's up to you. But thanks for Mr. Fourth Row and Salty Sea Dog for checking in. Remember, email podcast@prowrestlingnewshub.com with your MP3s or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. That is the cutoff time. And, oh, yeah, that's right. You wanted me to talk about fantasy. So right now, fantasy AEW is looking like we're right on track for that January 4th. I am finishing up the trade part of the application so that you can make trades during the season. So we have the waiver wires complete. We have the trades that I have to work on a little bit more, but that's getting close. We have now in there a notification. So basically anytime there's stuff going on within the league, it posts in a little notification block. So it will say like, Mark traded Mr. Fourth Row, John Silver for John Moxley, or proposed the trade, I should say, so that everybody kind of sees that, and then you have to accept the trade or deny the trade, that whole thing. That's the piece that I got to work on. There's also going to be a chat in there too, so this way you can interact with people in your league and they can get those kind of messages too. But we're really, the core for the most part is done. My one caveat though that I wanted to tell you, that the first run is only going to be total points. I want that. I'm trying to keep it simple in the beginning and then make tweaks as we go along. So we're not going to give you the ability in the beginning to go head to head, because we need to figure out how that works. I just want to make sure that we get the basics in. So this is just going to be a total points only. So every week you accumulate points. There can't be a playoff. And I don't even know if you could do head to head, because there is no playoff, really. Not like football. So I think it's just points. Well, we're going to go with that first. So really, once those things are in place, then it's just tweaking things and making things right. So you'll get a chance to take a shot at that beta come January 4th. We're still on target for that as well. So I'm excited to announce that as well. And so remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget about that. Be my friend and do that. And you can listen to us everywhere. You know the deal. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, everywhere. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I really appreciate that. For show notes, prowrestlingnewshub.com/AEW-podcast. And of course, join our Discord where we're having a chat about AEW fantasy. So join our Discord. That's in the show notes. That's in the description on YouTube and the description in your podcast feed. So that's it for this week. It's been a good week. I'm looking forward to the 18th. That's going to be a big show. I think we're going to hit that million, hopefully. And thanks for listening. Mahalo. Stay safe out there. God bless. And I will see you all later.